Welcome to Sober Talk. I'm Dennis and I have lived experience of alcohol. If you or anyone you know is struggling with alcohol, please call Alcoholics Anonymous on 1300 222222 or check out their website on aa.org.au. I'll just run through the preamble of Alcoholics Anonymous. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other. They must solve their common problems and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses or opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics achieve sobriety.
My name is Janet and I'm an alcoholic. Thanks to AA, I haven't had to pick up a drink of alcohol since 1983. By telling my story, my hope is that someone might hear something they can identify with and think to themselves, okay, it's worked for her, it could work for me. I hear many members at meetings who share that they knew their life was getting difficult. They had relationship problems, money problems, often health issues, difficulties at work, but they didn't know that their consumption of alcohol was behind all these difficulties. They didn't know they were an alcoholic. I was different. By the time I got to AA at age 42, I had known I was an alcoholic for several years. At that stage, I was married with 2 children, living in New Zealand. But let me go back to the beginning. I was born in England at the beginning of the Second World War. I'd had no brothers or sisters. I was an only child. And I guess that made me very self-centered, and I was the only person I had to think about. I had one very good friend at school, and I wanted to achieve. I always wanted praise. I always wanted to be told I was doing well. So I was an overachiever academically, not at sports, and I ended up going to university, London University. I was brought up in the country and all I wanted to do was get to the bright lights. At the age of 18, I succeeded. And off I went on my new adventure. And what an adventure that was. I spent a lot of time socialising in the first couple of years at university. It was a big college, and I'd gone from a school of 300 pupils to a college of 3,000 undergraduates and 1,000 graduate students. So I was really out of my depth. I found the studies quite difficult, but there were too many distractions anyway. And I ended up in a relationship after about a year with a guy who I was later to marry. At the age of 20, we got married. In those days, it was still the feeling that if you weren't married by the time you were in your early 20s, you were on the shelf for the rest of your life, if you were a woman, of course. And so I thought I'd done the right thing. But really, 2 20-year-olds getting married, we didn't know what we were letting ourselves in for. But we had a lot of fun in those first years. I managed to get a degree and I got a job. And my husband, at that stage, decided he wanted to go on and study further, so he was a postgraduate student. And we lived in London, and as I said, we had a lot of fun, and we didn't have a lot of friends, but we went out for walks every night and ended up at the pub for a beer. I didn't drink a lot. I had been to 1 or 2 student parties in my undergraduate days and had drunk so much that I was really hungover and sick, and I always thought, well, I'm never going to do that again. Little did I know. After a couple of years, my husband came home from studies one day and he said, I've applied for a job in Hong Kong at the university as an assistant lecturer. I'm fed up with being a student. 6 weeks later, we were on a plane to Hong Kong. We had no idea what we were going to. It was exciting. It was fun. When we got there were all sorts of new things to learn, new people to meet. Alcohol was really cheap. The first thing we did was bought ourselves some liqueur glasses and a bottle of Drambuie. That was our priority. I got myself a job on a local newspaper. Oh, well, it was a very good newspaper in Hong Kong. It was called the South China Morning Post. I got it by default. I didn't apply for a job as a reporter. I applied for a job as a proofreader, and I ended up working that job until I was about 6 months pregnant with my first child at the age of 25. My baby boy was born, and I was just ecstatic. So happy. And life was good. I didn't drink a lot. Certainly didn't drink during my pregnancy, mainly because I felt so sick all the time I was pregnant. We went back to England for 5 months. That was part of the deal, that the university would send you back home for 5 months, and I was very proud and took my baby boy with me, and yeah, we had a good time over there. Spent a lot of time in pubs, but again, I wasn't drinking that much. Back to Hong Kong, I got pregnant again, but that baby died at birth. And got pregnant again a few years later, and my baby was diagnosed with cerebral palsy at 6 months. I knew that she needed proper treatment that we couldn't get in Hong Kong, and for various other reasons my husband applied for a job in New Zealand at the University of Canterbury in Christchurch. And on the 4th of July 1971 we ended up in Christchurch, not knowing anybody, middle of winter. We'd had massive rows. We didn't love each other anymore. And my hair was falling out in clumps because I was so depressed. I found it difficult to cope with life on life's terms. I didn't know that was what was wrong with me. Anyway, somebody suggested, after I'd been in New Zealand or Christchurch for a few weeks, and I couldn't stop crying and my hair was falling out, that I go to the doctor and get some treatment, and he gave me some pills which stopped the hair falling out. It didn't make me feel much better. And over the next few years, I turned first of all to food to make me feel better, and I hated putting on the weight, so then I took up cigarette smoking so that I could lose the weight, and then I started drinking every day before my husband came home. It wasn't much because I couldn't afford much. But as long as I'd had a couple of glasses of wine or something like that before he came home, I felt I could cope. But to those of you who know anything about alcoholism or addiction of any sort, it doesn't stay at that level. It gets worse. And at the age of 40, I suppose I was 40, I was drinking heavily at parties. Sometimes I couldn't go out with my husband for a dinner party because I was too drunk by the time we left, because I always had to have a few drinks to fortify myself before we went out. And our marriage was, well, it wasn't a marriage anymore. It consisted of rowing every night. And I got myself a job full-time, which meant that I couldn't drink during the day, and that helped a bit, but it didn't stop the rowing at night. But it did give me money, and I was able to buy alcohol during the day at work. And in 1981, I just didn't go home from work one night, and I stayed with friends until I could get my own flat. And of course, there was no responsibilities other than getting to work and seeing my kids on the weekends. My drinking really took off, and I was drinking in the mornings before I went to work to stop the shakes. And my boss had given me a final warning. And one weekend when it was really bad, I rang a friend who's a social worker, or was a social worker at the time, and she came over and said, "Janet, you've got to go to AA." And I said, "No way." But she rang AA for me, and 2 women came round, and a couple of nights later to my little flat in the centre of Christchurch, and they told me their stories. But they also told me that I could go to a detox place and spend 3 days there. And that seemed to me to be like a great idea. So I ended up in the detox the next day, and from there I went to a rehab, and I stayed there for 3 months. I was so fortunate to be able to do that, because there I was introduced to AA. I'd known of AA's existence, but I always knew that in my heart that it would never work for me. I had no idea what they were going to ask me to do, but I just didn't want to go. But by the time I got to the rehab, I did want to take advantage of this chance I'd been given, because at the end of my drinking I wanted to die. I hated me, I hated everyone, I hated everything, but I didn't have the courage to try and take my own life. So during those 3 months at the rehab, I was introduced to AA, and we had AA meetings at the rehab, and after a few weeks we were taken out in the evenings to meetings in the city. And the 2 things that I know that were ingrained into me at that rehab was that I was not a weak person. It was not weak will that forced me to drink every day. I have an addiction. I have an illness. And at first I thought that was just a con job and they were just kidding me. But I came to believe that it was true, and I believe it to be true now. I have a physical allergy and a mental addiction to this substance, alcohol. And the second thing was that they said, you don't say, "I will never drink again." You say, "Just for today, just for 24 hours, I won't pick up." And that helped enormously too. The desire to drink did not leave me straight away. I came out of that rehab. I was very fortunate that the company I had been working for gave me another job, a different job, much less well paid, with a lot less responsibility, which was great. And I went to work every day, and I went to meetings in the evening, and alternate weekends my daughter, the younger child who has cerebral palsy, came to stay with me. And I kept that up. I got into a really good group of AA members who was strong, and we supported each other. And although I wasn't happy and I didn't find it easy, it was a consistent way of life, and it was a disciplined way of life. And I certainly hadn't had much discipline in my life for a number of years. They said to me, "Don't get into a relationship for 2 years." Well, I met this guy in the meetings. I'd seen him and I'd heard him share. And after 2 years, we got together and I moved in with him. And we both went to AA, and I was really happy. He was happy. My daughter was at boarding school at that time, but she came and stayed with us whenever she could on the weekends and for part of the school holidays. And it was great. It was so good that we thought that we could do it without AA. So after 4 years of going to AA meetings, I stopped going. And so did the man that I had met in AA. We were married by this time, so neither of us went to AA. And for 8 years, I didn't drink and didn't go to meetings, and life gradually got more and more difficult, and I didn't know why it was getting more difficult. But through the grace of a higher power that I'd come to believe in, because when I came into AA, I didn't believe in God and was very reluctant to use the word God or even have a faith in anything. I had come to believe in a higher power by this stage, and through that, I believe, the intervention of that higher power, I came back to AA in October 94. And I knew as soon as I sat down in that meeting that I had been shortchanging myself. I had been missing this program, which had helped me for 4 years to live life on life's terms. I had been missing the fellowship, I had been missing the friendship and the caring. And even though I had a husband and a family, it wasn't enough for me. It isn't enough for me. I am an alcoholic and I need AA and the program of AA and the 12 steps. And so I haven't stopped coming to meetings ever since that date, October 1994. My husband, who was 13 years older than me, died in 2001. He came back to AA also before he died, which was great. And after a few years, I went to Australia on a holiday and met up with some AA friends over there and met a really nice guy called Sid. And a few years later, I moved over to be with him in Australia. And that was a new adventure for me. We both had left AA and come back, and we both had so much in common, even though he was an Australian and I'm English, living in New Zealand, and I call myself a Kiwi. But we just had a wonderful time together, and going away in the caravan every year up to the Northern Territories to do the roundups, made so many friends in the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous in Australia, going to the conventions. We always came back to New Zealand to do the New Zealand convention in January, and we did the Australian convention in Easter every year that we could. And it was a great life. And unfortunately, he died in 2017, and I came back to live in New Zealand to be closer to my daughter, who's was needing me at that time in particular. And I've lived in Christchurch ever since. Up until the last 2 years, I was travelling back to Australia quite frequently. I've kept in touch with my AA friends. AA has given me a chance at a wonderful life. And all I had to do was just follow a few simple suggestions. They seemed really hard at the beginning, but they weren't really. They're very simple. Sometimes they're not easy. But it's a way of life that helps me to cope with life on life's terms. AA doesn't say, we will protect you from all the blows of life, deaths and disappointments and illnesses and whatever else happens. But it does say, we will give you a program so that you can deal with those things and that you will not be overwhelmed. I was lucky enough to have very good sponsors in AA, and I still have a sponsor. A sponsor is somebody that you ring up, and if you've got a big problem, you can run it past them. Even if you've been around a few years like I have, I still get great ideas, and I think, I wonder if that's really a good idea. Running it past somebody else who knows you well is a much better idea than just going ahead like a bull in a china shop, which is what I used to do. and get myself into quite a lot of difficulties. Life is good, in spite of the last 2 years of not being able to travel to Australia, and also only having Zoom meetings and at times and Zoom conventions. It's still a great life, and I wouldn't swap it for anything. If you are listening to this and you wonder if you could use this program to help you, I would say, please give it a go. Go to 6 meetings. See how you get on. I believe that you will find the fellowship of AA to be a wonderful way of life. Don't give up before the miracles happen. That's what they told me, and they certainly did happen to me. Thank you for listening, and God bless you all.
We have local meetings for the full week in the local area. Monday is Gala meeting at 8 o'clock. Tuesday is Elizabeth East at 8 o'clock. Wednesday is Elizabeth East at 8 o'clock. Thursday is Two Wells at 8 o'clock. And Friday is Salisbury at 8 o'clock. There's a meeting at Deveron Park at 12 o'clock. And on Sunday there's a meeting in Salisbury at 7 o'clock. And many other meetings in the area. For details of your local meetings, please phone 1300 22 22 22. And once again, if anyone you know is struggling with alcohol issues, please call Alcoholics Anonymous on 1300 22 22 22. The website is aaSouthAustralia.org.au.